So X-Men Apocalypse has been released worldwide. Let's talk some spoilers. If you have not yet seen the movie, obviously go and watch my spoiler-free review, which you can check out right there. Holding. And that'll do. But if you have seen the movie, stick right around here. I'm going to be talking all the spoilers, all the little Easter eggs here and there throughout X-Men Apocalypse. So the big one that I sort of talked about in my spoiler-free review was, of course, Magneto. Something in a forest. Turns out that since the events of Days of Future Past, he's settled down. He's not Magneto anymore. He's working in some iron mill in some Eastern European country. I don't think they really tell you which one it is. But he's settled down. He now has a wife and daughter. And she has picked up on his mutant. It's been passed on. She is a mutant as well. She can control animals, I'm pretty sure, was her power. But there's an accident at this steel mill or whatever the fuck it was. Magneto saves a guy's life using his, powers and shit. And they find out who he is. The police come to arrest him. He's like, yep, no worries, I'll go with you. Some shit goes down. His daughter sort of goes crazy. All these animals start attacking the cops. One of them accidentally shoots an arrow and it pierces his daughter and wife thunk at the same time. They're both dead. It's bad times to be anyone in the vicinity. So yeah, Magneto just kills them. Just all of them. So he's not really in a good state of mind at this point in the movie. I'll touch on that a bit later. Let's go into some more story points I overlooked. So, Apocalypse. He is the first mutant. I touched on that in my spoiler-free review. Essentially what he does is he transfers his consciousness from body to body to keep himself alive. He finally finds a body very similar to Wolverine's, one that will continually heal itself so he can live forever. And at the very start of the movie, he's sort of trapped underground after these people try and kill him while he's transferring his consciousness from his old body to this new body. That body gets trapped and then he's sort of preserved there until he gets woken up in the 80s. And when he gets woken up, we get reintroduced to Moira McTaggart, played by Rose Byrne. Her being in the movie was kind of like, hey, I remember her from that previous movie that she was in with the X-Men, but other than that, I'm not too sure why she's here at all, except for Xavier to make weird sexual advances towards her, even though he wiped her memory in a previous movie. That's not weird, is it? No, that's definitely weird. So yeah, he wakes up, starts recruiting mutants. We get Psylocke, Storm, Angel, and of course Magneto. His recruitment of Magneto sort of happens as Magneto goes back to that factory he worked at. He's about to kill just everybody there as well, because he's really pissed off at this point. And we get the one fuck for the movie in kind of a funny moment where like Magneto's there like ready to kill everybody, and then like the three horsemen plus Apocalypse sort of just appear at the factory. Magneto sort of turns around and gives him one of these. Who the fuck are you? And kind of a funny moment, and then Apocalypse melts them all into the floor or something. It's kind of strange. His powers aren't really that fleshed out, which is I think one of the other problems I had with his character was just the fact that he can just sort of do anything, which in some of the fight scenes later on in the movie, it's like, well, why don't you do the thing that you did before? Like, there's one point where he just turns people to dust, and it's like, yeah, okay, so all the X-Men are attacking you, turn them to dust? Maybe just do that again, that power that you had at the start of the movie that you're conveniently not using now at this point of the movie when you're about to be defeated. Also, the introductions to all of the previously established characters we had, obviously, Nightcrawler, Cyclops, and Jean Grey. They're done pretty well, not too terribly. Sophie Turner, is that her name? The chick from Game of Thrones who plays Jean Grey. She was pretty decent as Jean Grey, but at the very end of the movie, and I was hoping like the minute she showed up on screen, I'm like, okay, just don't do this one thing, and I'll be okay with it. But they did the one thing that I wasn't okay with, and that is they pulled out the Phoenix Force right away. Not right away, but like at the end of the movie, the climax to defeat Apocalypse, eventually they pull out the Phoenix Force. I'm like, okay. It didn't seem all that necessary because like in the original trilogy of the X-Men movies, it was like it took 3 movies to get to that point of like, she's now the Phoenix and she's a fucking badass. And her tapping into that pretty much destroys the Jean Grey that we've grown to know, whereas this time around it's like, oh no, she's completely in control of it, it's fine. She can just sort of break it out whenever she feels like, and she'll still be Jean Grey after that, which kind of isn't what the Phoenix Force is all about. It's kind of like this whole thing that it totally takes over her personality, changes her completely, and she's pretty much an unstoppable badass from that point on. But no, it was like, Professor X just like, use the Force. The Phoenix Force, not the Force. But yeah, use the Phoenix Force to defeat Apocalypse. It won't fuck you up at all, and it doesn't. I just didn't remember like saying in my head, just don't use the Phoenix Force, because they sort of hint at it at the start of the movie when she's first introduced, and then I'm like, oh, they're gonna do it, aren't they? They're gonna bring out the Phoenix Force this early. You're gonna be doing more movies after this. Just leave it alone. Just no, forget about it. But no, they brought it out, so I wasn't entirely happy with that. The kid that played Scott Summers, he was okay, he was fine. And then Nightcrawler, whatever kid they got to play him, he was actually quite good. He was pretty funny. He had a few of the better lines, comedic lines anyway, throughout the movie. So that was a good casting choice. I hope we continually see him going forward. Now the big sort of elephant in the room is something I didn't really touch on in my previous review, was Mystique, played by Jennifer Lawrence. Not a lot of blue Mystique in this one. A lot of just Jennifer Lawrence's face. Now I don't know if that was a budget thing, although based on the special effects in this movie, not a lot of money went to the special effects at all, so they could have saved some and made her face blue a fair bit. And they tried to give this really flimsy reason of like, you know, she doesn't want to be identified as like the mutant savior that saved the world in Days of Future Past. She just wants to be herself, and she's sort of underground saving mutants as she goes, but she doesn't take him to Xavier to be saved. She just sort of like takes him to this really weird bald dude, which is where we meet Psylocke, and she's like, give him an ID, give him some money, and just get him the fuck out of here. So like, that's not a really effective way to save people. It's more just, here, fuck off out of my life. And it kind of seems like, yes, the special effect thing, but also it's just like, hey, it's Jennifer Lawrence. She's like the hottest actress right now. Let's get her face, her real face, in this movie just as much as we can. That's kind of what it felt like. She doesn't really blow up until like right at the end of the movie. Speaking of the end fight in this movie, my god, is it a bit of a CG clusterfuck. Like, there are some really good moments in it, but it as a whole is just stuff exploding, stuff disintegrating. I just felt empty watching them. Like, there's no, like, there is stakes, but it doesn't feel like there's stakes, because essentially they're in this part of whatever city they're in. It's been blown to hell. There's no civilians. You don't see civilians in this movie, like, at all. Like, there's fucking none. Like, cities are being destroyed. Like, New York gets destroyed again. At one point, Sydney is in this movie getting destroyed. And all you can sort of hear is like these muffled screams of people supposedly in these cities, but you never see civilians, so there's no stakes involved. Whereas something like Avengers, you know, both Age of Ultron and the original, there was people in Manhattan and there was people in Sokovia that they were trying to save. So while this battle's going on, they're also trying to save these civilians, so there's these overarching stakes to the whole fight, whereas in this case it was just like, this is a destroyed part of town and there's no civilians here, so let's just wreck shit. It just seemed to take all the stakes out of the fight. And also, Apocalypse is big like, we will destroy this world and rebuild a better one. And all he does is really get Magneto to like lift shit off the ground, and then it sort of all culminates in like around the battle that they're having at the same time. It's just like, what exactly is your plan, Apocalypse? What is your end goal? Because I'm not too sure even you know what your end goal is. So you're going to destroy all the major cities in the world, turn all of it into debris, and then what? You're going to build more cities out of the debris? I don't really get the whole thing of what you're trying to do. It was kind of unclear. Like, I got it. You want to kill everyone and then leave the world only to the mutants. But I never really saw anyone die, except for mutants. And all you did was destroy a bunch of buildings. Somehow Magneto's doing this across the fucking world. Because you remember, I'm pretty sure they're in like Cairo. Cairo? Here, right? Other side of the world, Sydney. How are you that magnetic, man? Like, I know you're strong, but fuck me, you're not that strong, are you? Also, Magneto has his, like, you know, typical change of heart. He becomes good at the end of the movie. I probably saw one of the cheesiest things I've ever fucking seen. Just as he's making his turn to the good side, Apocalypse is advancing on the rest of the X-Men in this little, what's left of the building, and all of a sudden a big steel beam comes and lands, whoomp, diagonally in front of Apocalypse that obviously Magneto threw there. And as it's there diagonally, I'm kind of thinking to myself, he's going to do it, isn't he? He's going to throw another beam, and it's going to form the X. And yes, lo and behold, thunk, oh my god, it's X for the X-Men. Go fuck yourself, screenwriters. Just in that singular case. That is some cheesy bullshit. Like, I get it, but it's cheesy as fuck. Wow, I really sound like I'm bashing on this movie when I gave it like a 3 out of 5, which is technically a fresh rating. let's try to talk about some good stuff. Okay, so like I said, the emotional moments in these movies, which a lot of them were resting on Magneto's shoulders, they were great. Him and James McAvoy, two fantastic actors who I can't think of a bad performance either of them have delivered, even in shit movies. So anytime there's a big heavy moment and it's resting on one of those guys to pay it off, works fine. It works great, in fact. They are fantastic actors, and they they are like the little versions of Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen. They deliver such good performances as these two characters because they are such polar opposites, but at the same time, you understand why these guys value each other as friends, as intellectual equals. Like, it works on so many levels. So the emotional moments really do work in this movie. But like I said, the action and special effects just kind of dragged it down a little bit, which was a real shame because I wanted this movie to be fucking awesome. Also, as I mentioned in my previous review, the Quicksilver scene in this one is amazing, and it kind of goes above and beyond what was achieved in the last one. The last one was sort of contained to just this room. This one takes place in the entire X-Men castle, Xavier's castle. I'll just call it that, in his big school thing. The whole thing's blown up and he goes in and saves like everyone inside. It was cool. He also has another like mini scene where he's fighting against Apocalypse. That was also really, really cool. Essentially, he's just like running around and just punching the shit out of Apocalypse from all these different angles until Apocalypse sort of like, trap your foot. And he does, and then he like breaks Quicksilver's other leg, and it's fucking brutal. And that is another thing, a lot of the action in this movie is really brutal. Like, they dial it up just that little bit. Like, Magneto's kid and wife dying was brutal. Quicksilver getting his leg broken was brutal. There's that scene they kind of tease in the trailer with like Apocalypse where it grows real big and looks like they're fighting inside the mansion. That takes place inside both of their minds, and that also is brutal. At one point, Xavier is like down with like Apocalypse on his head and like a pool of blood coming out of his goddamn mouth, and it's like blood and shit everywhere. And I think that's the point where he's like, use the Phoenix Force. I think I've touched on most of the main story spoilers that I can think of. Now I'm going to round this whole thing up with that little tease we got in the last trailer. The shing. I probably won't add claws. I'm not really good at doing special effects, but Wolverine. Wolverine is in this movie in a cameo for like 2 minutes. So at one point, a few of the mutants are captured by Stryker. Once again, he takes them to the big compound at Alkali Lake. They escape, and they're walking around the compound trying to find a way out, and they come across the Weapon X program, and Wolverine has just been Weapon X-ified, or I don't know how to say that. The process has sort of just recently happened. He's got like his headgear on, he's got, stuff coming out of him like hoses and shit, and he escapes from the cage they've got him in, and he just rampages. This is Wolverine. This is like proper kick-ass, insane, crazy Wolverine with like blood dripping off his claws, just just stabbing dudes, killing them. It's fucking great. And then right at the very end, it's like, is he gonna join him? Is he gonna join him? And then Jean Grey's like, and he runs off into the forest to do whatever it is Wolverine does. But overall, it was a cool scene. It was cool to see Wolverine in a smaller role. I know a lot of people were like, why is he in Days of Future Past? This doesn't make sense. It wasn't him that went back in time in the comic book, blah, 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 blah. Guess what? He's like the main guy in this whole franchise, so having him not in the movie is a bit hard. But once again, like with First Class, it was just a tiny little cameo. We got our little dose of Wolverine, and it was good enough, and we moved on. And now the very end credit scene, we got a bunch of people walking through the Alkali Lake facility. They go into where the Weapon X program was being held, or Wolverine was being held, and they grab like a bunch of x-rays and a bunch of blood, and they put it in a briefcase. When the briefcase closes, it says, shit, I know this, Essex Corporation, that's the one. Yeah, so I don't know anything about Essex Corporation. But yeah, I'm sure you can look that up in your own time. I probably should have done research for this, but I didn't. But anyway, that is all my spoiler thoughts and giving you all the spoilers and crap for X-Men Apocalypse. It was a good movie. It wasn't a great movie. That is about the best you're going to get. Really, I could have just gone on and done a 1-second video and just said, it's a good movie, it's not a great movie. Roll credits. No, wait, don't roll the credits. I've got to do like my end thing. So, obviously, if you're watching this, you guys have seen X-Men Apocalypse. Tell me what your favourite bits and least favourite bits from the movie in the comments down below. Click right here for all your movie needs. And as always, guys, catch you in the next one. Use the Force, Luke. I mean, Jean. How cool would Patrick Stewart be as Obi-Wan Kenobi? I mean, can you imagine?